A video by a Dubai real estate agent was viral in 2023. He was granting a client who flew in by helicopter a penthouse worth 40 million, and he did not negotiate the prices, nor did he negotiate any prices, but wired the money in 48 hours and closed the deal. Cash. No mortgage. The only query made by the buyer is how soon can I obtain residency? The same week, a private wealth manager at Geneva cited that 3 of her ultra-high net worth clients' total of over 2 billion in assets had directed her to start to structure way relocations, not investments, full relocations. By 2024, the way had received more than 30 billion of foreign direct investment. However, that is but the official number. According to the calculations of advisors in wealth management privately, the actual amount of money in private hands, such as undeclared investments, crypto funds, and offshore entities, may be 3 times more. This is not ordinary capital circulation. This is a flood, and it's accelerating. The international cash is not flowing only to the way, it is escaping out of another place. It does not matter why people are relocating to Dubai. The question is, what do they run away? In what way is offering that no one will? From Exodus, trace the money, decipher what may be the greatest wealth flight of peacetime in modern history. Let us map the Exodus. Follow the money and decode the Exodus. In April 2023, the UK raised its highest income tax to 45%, being added to national insurance contributions. There is an effective rate of more than 47% to high earners. Capital gains tax, 20% on most assets, 28% on property. Inheritance tax, 40% on assets. Though the United States has low headline rates, it is a global taxation on citizens. American citizens cannot avoid paying taxes to the IRS by relocating to another country. They will still be liable unless they renounce citizenship, which costs $2,350 and causes unrealized capital gains to be subject to exit tax. However, this is what no one is talking publicly about. The actual catalyst was not high taxes only. It was the trajectory. The debt crises that governments of the developed world were facing after the pandemic started to signal the more aggressive taxation in the future. Wealth taxes, unrealized gains of capital taxes, reporting requirements of digital assets, piercing the corporate privacy with beneficial ownership registries. A hedge fund manager with an office in London and a salary of £5 million per year pays about £2.3 million per year in income tax. That same person in Dubai, 0 income tax, 0 capital gains tax, 0 inheritance tax. That equals a saving of £2.3 million on a £5 million, more than 10 years. £23 million held in-house against surrendered. But it's not just about rates, it's about control. The OECD declared international minimum corporate tax rates of 15% in 2021. Governments started working on an auto exchange of information agreements. Even in Switzerland and Singapore, banking secrecy was practically over. The walls were closing in. Next was even more destabilizing, which was political instability disguised as democratic governance. The Brexit generated regulatory anarchy in the UK. American politics went into confrontation gridlock. France experienced frequent protests of yellow vests. Industrial exodus was caused by the energy crisis in Germany. Canada used the powers of Emergencies Act to freeze the bank accounts of the protesters. Nevertheless, whether you agree with or disagree with your politics, when you are worth £50 million, it is a threat test moment when the government starts freezing the bank accounts of citizens without trial. The rich started posing a question they never cared to ask so intensively before. Is my money safe here? It was at that point that the message of the way changed to be more of stability, predictability, and protection rather than great weather and low taxes. Nevertheless, there's one more factor that made everything faster. The invasion of Ukraine on February 2022 by Russia gave rise to the most aggressive round of sanctions in the modern era. Hundreds of billions in assets belonging to Russian oligarchs were frozen in Europe and North America overnight. Seized yachts at ports in the Mediterranean, London properties confiscated, bank accounts locked. Now that they were sanctioned oligarchs, you may say, and not lawful business persons. True. But when you are a Chinese business person whose property in London is worth $100 million, a Saudi investor whose property in New York is worth $500 million, you just saw Western governments show that they can freeze the foreign property in a glimpse of a wind in their geopolitical direction. No trial, no due process, just asset freezes. What would become of the US-China tensions? What will become of you when your motherland is no longer popular? Suddenly, it is not about diversification and returns. It's about survival. And this is where the Western policymakers must be terrified. The intelligent money shifted early on. By the time the governments realized what was going on, the infrastructures were already in place. We have, then, given what they are fleeing, penal levy, political unsteadiness, and the threat of having their possessions confiscated. But why the way specifically? Monaco has zero income tax. Singapore has rule of law. Switzerland enjoys the privacy of banking. The Cayman Islands have regulatory flexibility. What makes Dubai different? The solution lies in what financial advisors have termed as the trifecta. And the only way will provide all three at the same time. 0% personal income tax, 0 capital gains tax, 0 inheritance tax. However, the way is not merely a breastplate jurisdiction, as is the case with the traditional tax havens. It's a functioning economy. You can live there, your family can live there, you can send your children to the best schools in the world. You are able to do real businesses and not a shell company. Monaco has zero tax, yet it is 2 square kilometers. There's no space. The cost of property is over £40,000 per square meter. Singapore is cheap, yet costly, highly regulated and getting challenged by the Western governments regarding transparency. There is zero tax in the Cayman Islands. However, you cannot actually construct a life there. No infrastructure, limited healthcare, no cultural amenities. Dubai has zero taxes in an actual metropolis. Michelin-starred restaurants. International schools were ranked as the best in the world. Western-trained doctor hospitals, an effective legal system founded on the principles of common law that should be known by the rich Westerners, and what is perhaps of most importance, liquidity. You can buy and sell property, you can move money in and out. It has access to global markets. In 2019, the UAE launched a program called a Golden Visa. Invest £250,000 in property, 10-year residency, start a business, 10-year residency. Be a specialist in medicine, engineering or science. 10-year residency. In the case of people possessing special talents, which in fact refers to those who are globally recognized or possess a lot of wealth, the process is even quicker. It is in contrast to the investor visa of the UK that in 2022 was suspended, needing a minimum investment of £2 million and not offering citizenship prospects over years. Or the US F5 visa, which needs between $800,000 to $1.05 million to invest, takes over 5 years to process, and has limits that puts applicants of Chinese and Indian descent on a decade-long waiting list. The Golden Visa is not only cheaper and faster, it's actually attainable. However, here is the aspect which is not talked of extensively: enforcement predictability. The law system of the UAE is not the ideal one, but it is uniform. Keep 2 ranks and you are all on your own. No taxation is retrospective, no sudden policy reversals, no manipulation of public organs against the political adversaries, budgetary changes in the UK tax policy. It is a normal practice in the US, where regimes turn around the policies of their predecessors. In France, wealth tax was first abolished and then debated to be reintroduced, and then again. The rich people are not merely seeking low taxes, they desire to know that the rules would not change in the middle of their planning. Something Western democracies can less and less predict is that which the way can provide. And to one who is dealing with generational wealth, predictability is as good as percentage points. This is where it becomes interesting now. This is not only individuals who are moving around, it's entire ecosystems. In 2022, a crypto exchange called Binance relocated its regional head office to Dubai. Crypto.com followed. Bybit came into operation. Ox set up shop. These were not satellite offices. These were central centers of operation, which employed thousands of people and controlled billions of assets. Why? Due to the fact that as the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission was prosecuting by enforcement, suing Coinbase, attacking Kraken, introducing a state of legal uncertainty, the way was producing transparent licensing systems. The Dubai Virtual Assets Regulatory Authority came up with real regulations. The operational licenses were given to compliant exchanges. The message was obvious. We desire this industry and we will be clear. Conventional finance adhered to. Goldman Sachs increased its presence in the city of Dubai. Morgan Stanley expanded staff. Former London or New York-based hedge funds established offices in Dubai, not as a cost center, but as their main trading center. A managing director of one of the large investment banks told Bloomberg 5 years ago, "I would send people to Dubai, and they would not be found again before their retirement time. And now it is where you send your best traders." And when the professionals in the field of finance had relocated, the service providers came in their turn. Law firms, accounting firms, wealth advisors, private banks, family offices, a complete ecosystem that once used to be in London, New York, Singapore, and Zurich started imitating itself in Dubai. The Magic Circle law firms of Allen and Overy, Clifford Chance, and Linklaters all grew by a big margin, not only to deliver to local customers, to cater to their international customers who were migrating. However, the most uncovered migration is not financial professionals, it's the next generation. Rich families are not only transferring their funds, they are taking out their children. Dubai international schools have years-long waiting lists, not for average families. In the case of the children of ultra-high net worth persons, families with more than enough money, over £50 million, £100 million, £500 million, and make a decision not on the place they want to live, but on the place their children will live, without facing the cultural and political unsteadiness of the West. One of the British private equity executives informed the Financial Times, "I am capable of doing the taxes. What I cannot cope with is that my daughter returned home after her school in London and was taught that something wrong with the family wealth is natural. Success is not apologized in Dubai, but celebrated. It does not matter whether you agree with that point of view or not. The point is that it has to have momentum created by a sufficient number of wealthy individuals. Network effects are achieved through momentum. The richer individuals relocate to Dubai, the more the ecosystem develops to cater to them, which draws more wealthy persons, which forms more ecosystem. It's a self-reinforcing cycle. However, this is not what has made this different than other tax haven migrations of the past. The UAE is not secretly stashing wealth, it's displaying it. This does not mean money going down the Swiss bank vaults. This is £40 million penthouses, £2 million supercars, £100 million yachts in Dubai Marina, visible, traceable, and more than ever, permanent wealth. UAE has been spending more than $100 billion in infrastructural development within the last 10 years. Not oil infrastructure, diversification in infrastructure. Dubai International Airport ranks as the busiest in the world when it comes to international passengers. DP World has ports spread across 6 continents. The airline of Emirates flies out of Dubai to almost all major cities around the world. The Dubai International Financial Center has an independent legal system based on the English common law and independent courts. This isn't a tax haven. It is a parallel financial system, and it is being constructed with the express objective of being an international financial center competing with London, New York, and Singapore. However, there is one important difference: there is no income tax. Next, we can discuss the elephant in the room. What happens when the Western governments find that they are losing their tax base? The UK has already cancelled its non-dom regime in April 2025, abolishing the possibility of UK residents to pay no tax on foreign income. This was aimed at increasing the revenue. The effect: accelerated departures. The affluent who were thinking of relocating would now have time constraints, and they moved. The United States contemplated and quietly set aside projects of exit taxes on renouncing citizens, which would have imposed on net worth in many cases substantial percentages. Why? Since the threat was the only thing that caused such high numbers of citizenship renunciations. As of 2023, More than 5,000 Americans denounced citizenship, with many moving to the UAE. In 2010, France attempted to impose wealth taxes. Result: in 10 years, an estimated 60,000 millionaires abandoned the country and with them their businesses, their investments, as well as their tax contributions. The wealth tax was later nullified since it was spending more in revenue loss than it was generating. This is the paradox. The harder the Western governments attempt to tax those who earn high income, the more of them will move to the zero tax lands and decrease the total taxation income. And the way is not going against any international treaties. It is just a way of providing an improved deal. However, there lies a question that no one is asking publicly, and that is, what happens to the Western countries when their most productive citizens walk away? It is not about the tax collection. It's about entrepreneurship. It's about job creation. It's about innovation. When a tech entrepreneur with a valuation of £100 million relocates to Dubai, they carry with him or her the equivalent of their taxes contribution. They make their next startup, which could have hired 500 people in London. They steal their angel investments that could have supported 20 other British firms. They bring their network, their expertise, and their choices of capital deployment. The way is not only pulling in the existing wealth, it is enticing forthcoming richest generation. And when that ecosystem is at critical mass, then it becomes self-sustainable. A technology founder who relocates to Dubai on account of tax incentives finds that a half of their network is there already, so they stay. There they construct their second firm. They also invest in other Dubai-based startups. The ecosystem compounds. This is what has been experienced to London in the 1980s following the Big Bang deregulation. European finance centered there because of the severe quality of the British banks and not because the ecosystem reached the critical mass. Traders desired to be in the company of other traders. Investment banks desired to be at the end of the deals, and once created it reinforced itself. Dubai is trying to play the same game, and the initial signs indicate that it is working. However, here is the question that is unsolved and which must keep the Western policymakers awake at night. Is there a breaking point to this? At the moment, there are approximately 250,000 millionaires in the UAE. That is millionaires, not million-dollar earners. Those that have a net worth of over $1 million. In context, there are about 2.5 million millionaires in the UK. The US has 22 million. The 250,000 figures in Dubai constitute approximately a tenth of an entire millionaire population in a city with a population of 3 million people in the UK. Should that percentage increase by 500,000 millionaires in the next 5 years, which current trends indicate this can happen, then Dubai will match the number of millionaires per capita as any other country in the world, and that is where the network effects come in overwhelmingly. All financial services, all high-end brands, all professional services, all cultural institutions will be geared towards that market. The governments of the West would then have the options, either to reduce the taxes to compete or to lose their capital permanently. Tax reduction also means lessening the number of services provided to the people, and this attracts political opposition. Failing to reduce taxes translates to viewing their tax base lose out anyhow. It is a trap that has no clear way out, and the UAE knows this. However, this is what the introduction of corporate tax has actually presented. The UAE is acting in a long game. They are not attempting to be a pure tax haven indefinitely. They are attempting to develop a sustainable and diversified economy that just by coincidence has extraordinarily low taxes compared to their competitors. And they are utilizing the present wave of migration to expedite that transformation. Still, oil revenue constitutes about 30% of the UAE GDP, a decline in the 1980s, which was approximately more than 50%. It has an explicit strategy of cutting that to less than 20% by 2030. How? Through the attraction of the world rich who come with capital, expertise, and networks that create the non-oil economies. All of the hedge funds that move to the country train local Emirati talent. Knowledge is transferred by every tech firm which sets up their headquarters. All the family offices coming on board are investment savvy. UAE is not only picking tax refugees, it is outsourcing human resources in bulk, and this is where the geopolitical interest comes in. Since what the UAE is doing, whether intentionally or unintentionally, is to form an alternative pole on the global financial system that does not work on the Western terms. As a Chinese billionaire, you worry about being confiscated by the CCP assets. You cannot go to New York. US-China tensions-based tensions pose a threat. Can you not go to London too much in line with Washington? Singapore may, but tiny and getting more and more strained. Dubai is a place that provides scale, impartiality, and secrecy against the sanctions of the West and the extravagance of the government of China. In case you were a Russian oligarch and have to go through sanctions, the West has frozen your assets. However, the way retained rather neutral stances. It also denounced the invasion diplomatically but did not take any sanctions. Dubai property, Dubai banks, Dubai business structures were still made available. As a Saudi investor seeking to diversify and stop being oil dependent, the way provides both cultural and geographical proximity as well as an economy that, quite literally, has been built to facilitate that very process. The way is turning into the Switzerland of the 21st century. It is neutral, rich and is too useful to enough of the powers that it exists in such a way that they all accepted its presence. However, unlike Switzerland that constructed its status through centuries, the way is trying to make this change decades within decades. Will it work? That's the trillion question. Since there are valid dangers that no one is openly talking about, the legal system in the way is in the process of improving, but years of precedents that support London or New York are still missing. Dan has been sent to prisons where expats are held. Although property rights are overall respected, they are governed by systems that are unfamiliar to the Westerners. There are societal constraints that are limiting to the rich liberals in California or London. The geopolitical location is dangerous. The UAE is a country located in a conflict area where Yemen, Iran, and Israel-Palestine are in a continuous conflict. Overnight capital flight could be a result of a regional war. The stability, which is the wealth-attracting factor today, may disappear in case geopolitics change. And there is the basic question: is it possible to have a city built upon imported money to survive when that money goes? Should the Western governments manage to enforce the global minimum taxes? Should political stability be restored to Europe and America? Should the next generation of the rich citizens find it that Dubai has no cultural richness like London or New York? What will become? These are questions which have no answers. But this, as we know, is the money pouring in. The ecosystem is building. The effects of the network are compounding. And each month a month that is not reversed makes the course of the trend more difficult to reverse. The way isn't perfect. However, it is providing what the West cannot provide at present: low taxes, political stability, predictability and enforcement, and a true hopefulness about the future. Into the globally mobile affluent that mix is more than any one of the factors put in isolation. So what happens next? We're watching in real time. Western regimes are beginning to pay attention. The abolition of the non-dom in UK was a direct measure. US politicians are talking about exit taxes. The tax policy is being synchronized in European states, but communication is slow and money is fast. When the Western governments finally have a joint reaction to the problem, the way ecosystem can be already set in stone. And here is the race we are following: is the West reforming as fast as is necessary, or will the exodus become incurable before reform comes? The verdict isn't in yet, but the money is moving, and when it has started on, it is extremely difficult to stop. We are experiencing the possible biggest wealth migration of peacetimes in the current history. And the repercussions to the Western economies, to world finance, to world geopolitical strength will not be apparent in years, but they'll be permanent.